Now, the next thing you should always ask is, what are you flying into? How many Marines are in there? What weapons do they have? You don't want to be flying into a room and be surprised that there's all of a sudden 3 shotguns and they completely tear you apart. You want to try and know beforehand. If you don't know, you want to kind of just pop in there for a second, maybe get a one bite on one of them, or eventually, when you're like me, you'll eventually know what their outlines look like. If they're parasited or something, you'll be able to tell that they're holding a shotgun. Or you might hear them shooting some harvesters, etc. Is there a nearby phase gate? If there's a nearby phase gate, like I said before, don't bother, because if you kill them, there's someone else who's going to come through that gate and kill you or grab their shotgun, so there's no point in killing them around phase gates. Now, don't engage a group of 3 or more Marines unless one of them is out of line of sight of the other 2. You need to be really mindful as well of any new Marines coming into the room. I've been caught off guard plenty of times. I'll be so focused into killing one Marine that another guy will just come walking in, and because they're not distracted by the combat, they are going to be able to hit a lot more of their shots than the guy that you're fighting. And then you're forced to get hit by the 2 of them on your way out. So there's a good chance you can get killed or be down to 20 HP, so another Marine can cut you off on your retreat. On that note, grouped Marines. When there's 3 or more Marines, most of the time you don't want to engage them at all. But sometimes, if they're trying to get a phase gate up or something, and if there is aliens coming on the way, then sometimes it can be beneficial to just hang around and spike them a little bit. So the way you should go about this is like only spike them. Don't bite them, because if you fly in for a bite, they're just going to completely mow you down, especially if there's any shotguns with them. Try not to make yourself an easy target while spiking. Try to move around as much as possible, but try not to do what I do. This is something that I fail at quite a lot. Is I press spacebar way too much, which drains your energy, because spikes and pressing spacebar do use a lot of wings. A lot of wings, rather. A lot of energy. Now, if it looks like one of them is rushing towards you, this is something that the Marines like to do when you're sitting there spiking them. Get out immediately, especially if it's a shotgun. It only takes about 230 damage to kill a Lerk outright, and shotguns can do about 200 in one hit if they meat shot you. You're very squishy as a Lerk, so you got to be really careful. Get out preemptively. Also, something to be wary of is if you're coming in a room, spiking a bit, leaving, coming back in. When you come back in the second time, there may or may not be a Marine waiting around the corner to snipe you with a shotgun or something. So you got to be really careful of that as well. So just be careful. Kind of peek around the corner to make sure they're not there before you start spiking. If they are, then immediately run, because if there's a shotgun close to you, that's going to be half your health gone in a second, or it might even kill you if they're able to land their shots well. Now let's get into specific types of weapons you'll be doing with. Now, the most common one you're going to be coming across is Rifle Marines. Now, these, on their own, they're not too much of a threat unless you're dealing with someone who's able to, land, 30% accuracy. I know a few people like that, and those people are crazy. But, in general, you want to try and enter the room in a place where you're out of line of sight. If that's not possible, then, and they already know you're coming, you just want to break their line of sight as long as possible. And if they're already shooting at something, say a harvester or another skulk, then try and stay out of line of sight and get a bit closer until they reload. You'll hear them reload. As soon as that happens, you have about a 2-second window where they can't do any damage to you at all. So go for it and take that out. As soon as you're up close in front of them, try to be as unpredictable as possible. Something I like to do is after I get a bite on them is fly directly vertical up and then back down again. Most of the time it just completely throws them off, or they'll look up at the ceiling and then you're back down at the ground again. And if they do too much damage to you, then you need to get out immediately. Like I said, you want to get out preemptively. If you feel like if you miss some of your bites, or if you lose a lot of your armor or health, then you want to get out immediately. Now, I don't know if it helps too much, but something that I like to do when I'm retreating out of the room is throw my mouse up and down, and if I can, hug the top of the ceiling, because you tend to get a lot of lips in the ceiling where it breaks a bit of line of sight for the Marine, or fly close to the ground. There's usually a lot of objects on the floor. You can hold space and you will just slide along the ground. You won't latch to it. Now, you'll see me doing this a lot in my footage here that I'm probably showing you. I hope I'm showing you. Now, Like I said before, if you miss a couple bites or get 2 bites on him and he's still alive because the com's medding him or something, break line of sight with him, fly away. Most Marines, unless they're a good one, are going to start reloading. So come back in about 2 seconds later, especially if you hear the reloading, and you'll be able to get him as he reloads. He'll be down to 2 bites if you've been landing anything. But I have to stress that you should always keep an eye on your health. And as I said before, don't get greedy. If you land 3 bites and you know he's on 1 bite, if you've already taken a lot of damage, don't go for it, because all it takes is 1 comms med to screw you up, and he's on 2 bites, and he can easily kill you. Now, let's get into Shottie Marines. These guys are the most dangerous Marine you'll ever encounter in the game, besides fucking grenade launchers. Hate those things. But they're much more common than GLs, so you won't have to worry about that too much, but I'll get to that later. Now, never, under any circumstance, go for a bite on a shotgun when they're facing you. You should always spike them first and wear down their armor for other life forms that have more health, or disposable skulks, because skulks are disposable. As I said in my last tutorial, it doesn't really matter if they die. And like I said in the skulk tutorial, if you've got a Lerk backing you up, you can just come in there and bite the Marine, because he's likely being spiked and has lost his armor. Now, the only time it's reasonably safe to bite them, and this is, I say safe in quotation marks, is if they have their back to you. But even then, you want to be ready to get out right away, because if you miss one of your bites, it usually takes about 3 or 4 bites to kill them, depending on their armor level. Then you want to get out right away, because depending on how fast his reaction time is, he might have enough time to spin around and meat shot you. And as I said before, the Lerk dies at about 230 damage. So yeah, you got to be really careful of that if you do decide to do that. Count their shots, same as the rifle, although a bit harder, because shotguns reload a lot faster than rifles do, and they reload bullets individually. If the Marines fired 6 times at a harvester, for instance, if you feel confident, then try and go for the bite, because he's probably going to miss that one shot, or have to swap to the pistol. Be really careful though, because it's extremely risky doing this. Only do so if you're confident or have an almost full health bar. Now let's get into some of the more obscure tricks and less common scenarios you're going to be coming across. Let's start with the bloody grenade launchers. These guys don't tend to come out until late game, but when they do, avoid them like the plague. These things will bloody 2-shot you. They do about 130 damage each. I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but they will 2-shot you, depending on if you've got carapace or not. Even then, I think it's still 2 shots. I'm not sure. Point is, if you must engage them, make sure they've used all of their grenades first. A lot of people will tend to spam these things and waste them. It's the ones who actually time their shots that you have to worry about. Now, if they've used all their grenades, it takes them about 5 seconds to completely reload, so you have that amount of time to kill him. If you don't manage to kill him in that time, back off, wait for him to waste the grenades, or reload again. Now, that is risky in and of itself. If you don't get out in time, he might be able to GL you on the way out. A safer way of fighting them is by spiking. But you need to be careful, because if you have less than a quarter of your armor, more or less, 1 grenade will kill you. So all it takes is 1 Marine chipping you with something, and that GL is going to be able to kill you. Most of my deaths, I'm going to say this now, the vast majority of my deaths in pubs are from GLs and dying when I'm around phase gates. But I'm going to do that. I'm going to get to that later. Now, one of the other situations you might have to deal with in late game is flamers. They're not that big of a deal, but people tend to underestimate them. They're extremely powerful, especially if they're with other Marines backing them up. But by themselves, all you have to do is really be wary of how fast they sap your energy, because they can leave you falling to the floor and someone else might be able to snipe you off. They have very limited range though, so you might be able to get a bite or 2 off on them before they can hit you too much, and then just finish them off with spikes. Easy enough, because they can't shoot very far at all. Now, this is where it gets really hard. This is late game. If you manage to survive this long, props to you, because most Lerks, including myself, don't live this long. We end up getting killed by something before then. So if you manage to make it this far, you've been doing really well. But this is where things get very tricky. Any of the weapons I've mentioned can also have a jetpack, which greatly increases their mobility and how hard they are to kill. But as a Lurk, it's a lot easier for you to kill them than it is for other life forms, because you can fly right up to them. A Fade has to use a lot of energy to get to the jetpackers. Skulks need leap and good timing, so you're in the best position to kill them. So it ends up falling to you a lot of the time. But you need to be careful, because if there's a shotgun jetpacker, he will chase you down. They do a lot of damage. You're not going to be able to do much to those. I would recommend just spiking them if you have friends nearby. If you don't, they're probably just going to jetpack towards you and chase you down, because they can go almost the same speed as you with a jetpack. Also, with any other kind of jetpacker, just follow the same tips I gave you, but just be in mind that they're a lot more mobile. And also, something you have to be aware of is, like I said, the jetpack is almost as fast as you are, so they're gonna, a lot of the time, if they feel like they've done enough damage to you, they're gonna chase you down when you try and leave the room. So break your line of sight with them as soon as possible, or head for a vent. But on that note, make sure the vent is safe, because when Marines have jetpacks, they can get into any vent at all, so no vent is safe. On the same note, if jetpacks are up, you might also have exos. These things will bloody tear you apart if you're not careful. They do insane damage. They're also another thing that's quite underrated. Their only weakness is that they require Marines to weld them, otherwise they can't regen their health. And again, as a Lurk, you stand one of the best chances of taking them down, because you can spike them at range, and spikes do a good amount of damage against exos, whereas everyone else has to get close, and they're going to take a lot of damage trying to get close. Now, never engage them alone. Wait for backup, and when backup arrives, spike them. The reason being, you're at a distance spiking them, and if you don't have any other allies with you, you're the only target, and as Kelmos has pointed out to me when I was running this past him, is exos can kill you in about 0.5 of a second, if you're not careful. So if you see them turning to face you, or it looks like they're about to start shooting at you, move. You have about I would say about half a second before the gun warms up and starts shooting. So if they look towards you, you want to get out of there. Just be very wary of how much damage they do, because they will melt you. Now, the next thing is, this is just a little trick that I like doing. Some other Lerks do it as well. But something I'll do, it's kind of risky, but if you hear a solo Marine in the next room or something just running along, I'd like to try and glide after I've flapped a couple of times to get to max speed. And gliding, as I said before, it makes you almost completely silent. So you can float up behind them and get 2 or 3 bites on him sometimes. Sometimes it's enough for a kill, but if you miss one of those bites, you want to get out of there immediately, because otherwise they'll spin around and shoot you in the face, like I said on how to deal with shotties before. Now, another slightly less common situation, but one you will have to deal with, is when you have to bite structures as a Lurk. For the most part, you don't want to be doing this at all, but the times that you do need to, like, say, you need to help Skulks pack down a phase gate or something, or you have a second Lurk with you to bite down a node. You never want to bite down a res node. If you're by yourself, it takes too long as a Lurk. But, yeah, you never bite a structure by yourself. Leave that to Skulks. Skulks are good at doing stuff by themselves. Try to stay in the air while biting if possible. Something that's good to do is just flap once or twice while you're biting, just so you're moving around a bit. You're harder to hit. Because if you sit on the ground, again, in the big 5 things not to do, sitting still, even while biting a structure, is just asking for trouble. A lot of the time when I've lost my Lurk, it'll be, like I said before, around phase gates. That's one of the times I lose my Lurk the most. You'll have a Marine jump out of the phase gate and shotgun you in the face, and you're dead. Because they'll try and focus you, because you're a high priority target. Now, finally, Spores and Umbra. This is something I haven't really talked about yet. These are 2 abilities that your commander has to research for you to be able to use them, but they're extremely useful. Make sure you use them, especially Umbra. Umbra reduces the damage of any alien unit, including structures, hives, whatever, by a third, 33%. That is huge. It'll easily save yourself or friendlies if they're being chased. So make sure that it also allows them to stay longer in the room. Now, it's most useful when you have Onos up in the game and for yourself. because it just lets you, like I said before, it lets them stay longer in the room and it can help them retreat. Now, I've lost count of the amount of times that Umbra has saved my ass if I've done something risky. Just be mindful that it uses a quarter of your total energy pool, so don't spam it. Make sure you use it when needed. Something to be mindful of as well is it's only temporary unless there's something that something that you're shooting it at is inside of the cloud. The cloud lasts about 5 seconds, so you want to shoot it where you think your teammates are going to be going. Now, the next thing is spores. Spores, I don't tend to use that much because they're pretty limited, but they can be useful in some situations. A good example is for area denial. A lot of Marines won't go into a spore cloud, so you can drop it in front of a doorway or something, and they tend to just kind of sit out the front waiting for the spores to leave. But they also do a decent amount of damage as well because they bypass armor and just do straight up health damage. But yeah, with all that said, my voice is actually getting quite sore after talking. I've been talking about 10 minutes now. Hopefully you guys have learned something from this. I actually really enjoyed doing this tutorial because Lerk is something that I really enjoy doing and I have the most experience with. So let me know if you learnt anything from this, if you found it helpful, and I'd appreciate if any of you guys find a rookie or something that you think wants to learn something, point him at one of my videos. That'd be great. Now, I hope you guys learned something from this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys in the next one.